Well, it's a big infrastructure day, a gathering in Sydney of the great minds in project construction and logistics, all trying to sort out why Australia seems to have lost its mojo around the big deals that were supposed to drive Australian growth. Only yesterday, RBA Governor Glenn Stevens warned that it wouldn't be consumer spending that kickstarts the economy. Infrastructure needs to play a major part in building confidence and long-term growth.
The impediments to that outcome are not financial. The funding would be available. Long-term interest rates are as low as we've ever seen or ever will. So the impediments to the world I describe, possibly naively, they're not in the financing. They seem to be in our decision-making processes, and it would seem in our inability to find political agreement on how to proceed.
Politics, politics. The best laid plans from the would-be infrastructure Prime Minister have been peppered with roadblocks. Queensland's state Labor election victory dashed hopes for major privatisation and asset recycling into billions of dollars of infrastructure. In Victoria, the Labor government axed plans to build East-West Link, costing over $300 million in compensation and a black mark on sovereign risk. Yesterday, the French multinational that lost $1.4 billion in work on the project warned that contractors have become hostages to politicians. And the private sector has been burnt several times by toll road projects that fail to deliver the promised traffic and toll money. So in Sydney, the state government has opted to build the new WestConnex toll road with taxpayer money. Well, on the positive front, logistics company Qube briefed analysts this morning on its massive intermodal terminal at Moorebank in Western Sydney, which will connect to Port Botany, a joint venture involving both the government and Aurizon. The ambitious goal is to take 3,000 trucks off the road, cut 40,000 tonnes of greenhouse gas a year and deliver an average cost reduction for importers and exporters of 20 to 25%. Well, in a moment we'll hear from Qube, but also attending the AFR's National Infrastructure Summit is Dr Kerry Schott, who chairs the company that's overseeing the development of Moorebank for the government, which owns 2/3 of the land, I think. She was awarded the Order of Australia this week and she joins me now. Kerry Schott, congratulations on the Order of Australia.
Thank you, Tiki.
Now, look, just on Moorebank, a very complex project. Are you confident that the folk at Qube will be able to deliver this?
We're very confident about that, and we did look at other players in the industry before we moved to negotiate an arrangement with Qube and with their partners Aurizon. Qube are already running a shuttle service through to the port using rail, and they're one of the few rail operators that we think can really get this to work.
Looking at Glenn Stevens' comments yesterday, infrastructure doesn't have a money problem, a funding problem. It's largely political. How do we get around this impasse?
There's not just one thing that causes the issue. If we just look at Moorebank, it's a precinct that's being put together with land that Defence used to use and with land that Qube and Aurizon own. Getting Defence to move took quite a long time.
It's taken about a decade, hasn't it?
It has taken about a decade, and it's been talked about perhaps for even longer. But finally, once Defence moved, things then go very slowly, partly because of planning approvals and environmental approvals. But, you know, in 2 years we've managed to get well down the track and we've now got signed contracts.
What about more broadly? Because this was a PPP, a public-private partnership. We've heard earlier about the risk allocation problems with toll roads and how Mike Baird is now looking at government funding for his new toll road.
Well, the private sector is very wary about taking demand risk on traffic, and you can understand why they would be after their losses with Cross City Tunnel and Lane Cove Tunnel in Sydney.
So is Mike Baird making the right decision?
I think so, but he's making a decision where the government is wearing that risk initially and they will then sell down in a much less risky asset later. So I think the financing around WestConnex is quite innovative and will work very well for the state.
So he might make more money for the taxpayer that way?
I think he will, yes, he should.
All right. Now, you're on the board of Infrastructure Australia. Now, that has been called a bit of a toothless tiger and you know, really working at the whim of ministerial intervention. Are you comfortable with that setup?
I think there's some misunderstanding about the role of Infrastructure Australia. We are not a body that has a big bag of money that we hand out. We're a body which has just completed an audit about where there are infrastructure gaps, largely in transport, frankly. And we are now going to do a plan which sets out what needs to be prioritised over the next 15 years. What we find is likely to not always fit what politicians would like to do first for political reasons. And if that's what they want to do, they're elected politicians, and that's what they will do and probably should do.
So if they decide not to do a cost-benefit analysis on something, that's politics?
That's politics, yes.
I mentioned your Order of Australia earlier. You say your proudest moment is actually at Sydney Water.
Yes, we've forgotten about how difficult it was during the drought in the mid-2000s, and Sydney, I think, has forgotten how water efficient we've become as a city with aerated taps and dual-flush toilets and recycled water in all the new buildings. This is unusual in developed cities.
And of course, I must ask you about political corruption, because you were pressured both from the right and the left side of politics with all the Obid drama. What is your advice to anybody in business who is pressured by corrupt forces?
Well, within government business, you're there to do a job, and our main goal was actually to just keep doing our job, which we did. But in terms of what was happening at the time, my main advice is to just tell everybody who will listen what's going on, so people are very aware of the pressure that you're under and what that pressure is.
Dr Kerry Schott, been great to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tikki.